Hi, everybody. Jody Page here with Lighter Capital, another happy hour with the founder. For those of you that have not had an opportunity to view these before, this is really my opportunity to let the rest of the world meet these great entrepreneurs I come across in the context of my job. And today we're talking with Cooper Harris of Klickly. Hi, Cooper.
Hello, Jody. How's it going?
Doing well. Thank you so much for jumping on. I always like to leave a little bit of room for people to show or talk about what they do. And so for those of us that don't know about Klickly, full disclosure, Cooper is one of the few entrepreneurs that I've done these with that I haven't done business with yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. We'll get there. But Cooper, can you share a little bit with the world about what Klickly does and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the CEO and the founder of Klickly, and Klickly does machine learning powered customer acquisition. We are an invite-only software as a service platform. Interestingly, yeah, we turn down about 6 brands who apply, and we accept 1. So we're very selective. And
Wow.
We work with about 2,000, though. We work with 2,000 of the hottest, fastest growing e-commerce companies in the US. So imagine your Four Sigmatics, think about the likes of like a Kopari or even Utz chips, which is hilarious because I grew up eating them. Anyway, yeah, so that's what we do. And we basically use a huge amount of data to be very automated in how we go after consumers. When we drive a consumer acquisition to buy from one of our fantastic brands, then and only then do we get paid. So in a fun way, it's kind of similar to like a lighter capital model in that, you're only paying us out of the revenues that we're making you. So it's a very aligned model for the brand.
Yeah. I've come across that, and I like those models. And sometimes you see a hybrid where it's like kind of there's like a base licensing fee and then some sort of success or maybe transaction type fee in the deal, right?
Yeah.
And it's great because it does leave a lot of room for upside, because if the relationship's valuable to the other side, why would they leave it? Particularly in a lead gen model, right?
And especially today with what's going on in our industry and what's upcoming in our industry, things are going to get super weird. Unfortunately for us, we're in a really nice position where all that data privacy stuff doesn't affect us the same way as it does others. So yeah,
makes sense. So when did you start Klickly? Because I don't believe it hasn't been around for like a long period of time.
No, we're like 3.5, 4 years old. We spent about 1.5 years just like crazy people building the tech, testing the tech, in beta. And we really launched out of beta like 2-ish years ago. So we've gone from essentially no revenue at all to now actually being semi-profitable, which is pretty cool and unusual for a VC-backed company.
But you've attracted, you said 2,000 clients?
Yeah.
That you've attracted?
Yeah.
And you're vetting out, I don't know,
a large percentage.
Over 20, only less than 20% are actually becoming clients.
Yes, that is correct. Yep.
So how'd you create that problem? How does that play out? Right.
So it's 2 things, Jody. And the first, to be completely honest, because we're a bunch of founders here, the first is somewhat of a vanity metric, because let's be real, not all of these brands would anyone want to work with. That's just the real truth, right? So that's the fact. However, we are genuinely pretty selective because we want to make sure that that the folks we're working with are of like really top tier quality. Because keeping in mind, we only get paid if we're pushing sales, if we're generating sales. So if we work with brands who have yet to develop that brand voice and those really good, even image assets, if those aren't there yet, it's just too much risk for us because we can't sell their products.
Yeah, of course. So so talk to me about, because 2,000 is obviously a big number, particularly in less than 3 years. So But what about that first 100 clients? I'm curious about the process to that first 100 clients.
So crazy enough, a lot of them are still with us, which boggles my mind. When we launched, oh my God, it was just ugly. The whole thing was super ugly. Like the product wasn't there because I am a really big, we built the algorithms and stuff and the intelligence, but then, making a sweet, customer experience that takes not just you and a good designer in a silo in a room, thinking about things. No. And that's my pet peeve, by the way, with founders, is when they go off and we love our ideas and we just think about them. No, you have to get real testers on your platform, and you have to
Right.
run real interviews with them, hundreds
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
person, telling you what they hate, what's ugly about your baby, right? And without the discipline to do that 100 times, you're going to have a terrible product. But that is how
Yeah.
we found our commission-based model. So essentially, we have a really cool and very different kind of model, which is brands decide how much to pay us when we drive a sale for them. So they could put in anything they want on a commission basis.
This is so interesting.
You're
I mean,
like,
this is
what is
so
going
like in
on?
the no, well, it's just so in the opposite direct. By the way, this is a happy hour, so I guess we
Yes.
should cheers.
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 Cheers,
Thank you.
Jody. I'm drinking some beautiful sugar-free kombucha. So just pardon my California-like self.
No, it's quite all right. I'm drinking some strange liqueur I found buried in the back of my cabinet because I put myself on bourbon restriction. I got to be honest. I did.
Restriction. I love that.
I did.
Amazing.
I had to. Well,
That's
anyway,
incredible.
I'm super happy you were able to do this. And I mean, we go back. I had to think about it. I was like, okay, well, when did I meet Cooper? I met Cooper at Recurring Revenue Conference.
That's what I thought. Yes.
Peter
Yes.
Cowan's conference.
That's amazing.
Okay, so I mean, I am curious about this because you went through some iterations on really the monetization model. Like, how are we going to do this? So did you start as a licensing model and then migrate, or like what? Because a lot of entrepreneurs really struggle with how to monetize, right?
Yes.
They know the tech is good, but just how do we get people to pay us for us?
Yeah, I mean, so initially we just had people pay us kind of like a normal consumer acquisition platform, like any of them out there, be they automated marketing, be they advertising. We're just like, well, we'll do something, very normal. And they're like, but the reality is we have these incredible algorithms behind what we're doing. And we're very consistently starting to produce these like outsized results since we can do it. And it's like sweet music to brands' ears. They're like, wait, we only have to pay when we're driving actual sales. We're like, let's do that. And then let's up the ante because we can, and let every brand, because every brand is unique and different, has different margins and different needs and different strategies. Let's let every brand pick the exact commission they want to pay us when we drive a sale. So we literally have brands come to the platform, and there's a lot of advanced settings that we could talk about, but they just pick, hey, I want to pay 1, 2, 3, 5% on a sale, or I have growth funding, I'm aggressive, I want to pay 100, 200% on a sale, or because my product is a subscription.
How did you find your way to that though? Because
user interviews. Interviews with brands.
Just that same process that you referenced earlier. You just
and asking brands, how would you want to pay for consumer acquisition? If we build a tech engine that uses data to get consumers for you, how do you want to pay for this? And they were like, we want to pay for them on a performance basis. I was like, cool, let's do it.
Were they willing to give up were they willing to pay a bit of a premium for that, because they weren't giving you usually you get a little premium on the upside if you're not getting the downside protection generally?
No, we get a premium because everywhere the consumers we get are always in premium channels. So they're always on like super top tier sites or our own O&O properties. We have like a ton of influencer apps, like all that kind of stuff. So they're very high quality consumers. And a lot of our brands are paying over 100%. Only because they have but that's like if they're a subscription, and they have a lot of confidence, and they've done a good job of building that LTV in for the consumer. But
like, when you think back to those early days of entrepreneurialism, what did you really struggle with in terms of kind of getting going and getting momentum, building your entrepreneurial muscles, if you will? To kind of fight through all that stuff, right? Like when you think about that time, what do you think about?
So what did I struggle with? Everything. However, part of this is because, as we talked about earlier, prior to jumping into this combo, that my original background, my career, I started as an actress, a TV actress on sitcoms and on daytime TV and on Broadway. So that was a major shift from that. I mean, talk about a non-traditional entree into entrepreneurship.
But those are unforgiving. Those are unforgiving environments.
Exactly.
Like brutally unforgiving environments.
Oh, we could really go there into the brutality of it. It is far worse. Raising funding from VCs in tech was a walk in the freaking park compared to, you know, parading around in front of like super sleazy douchebag producers in a bikini, you know, being told you're fat or whatever and offered God knows what all that I won't get into. Like,
Right, right.
oh, so much better.
That was par for the course.
And it gives you thick skin, yes. And Jody, here's the
Right.
thing. I went away to performing arts boarding school at the age of 15, and I left home to pursue this dream of
Right.
being an actor, which then somehow actually came to fruition, which is amazing. You know,
Right.
my first dream job, I got my dream job the day I graduated. I was on my grandmother's favorite soap opera. Who thought that was a good idea? I don't know.
All right,
But it
which
was
one?
cool.
Wait. Okay, which soap was this? Which soap? Just
As the world turns. I don't even know.
Oh
if it's
my
on
God, are you
anymore.
serious?
Yeah, yeah.
My grandmother, God rest her soul, she used to. I lived with her off and on growing up. We were just in and out of her
Oh,
house,
beautiful. Yeah.
and I distinctly remember, you know, being, you know, probably like 4 or 5. And this is back in the days when you would be out running around the neighborhood with the neighborhood
Yeah.
kids, like,
Yeah.
like at 4 or 5. It wasn't a big deal then.
Mm-hmm.
And she would ring a bell. And that was it was time for me to come home and eat lunch. And she would always plunk me down and watch her story. And
Watch her story.
her story was As the World Turns. So
Isn't that funny?
I had that soap in and out of my life for
amazing.
a long time.
And it was a really special moment, you know, and my grandma, it was quote unquote her story. That's how she referred to it, right? That was what she had. And then my other aunts and uncles or whatever, I guess not uncles, but followed other stories. But anyway, yeah. So that was my first
That's a
gig.
Southern thing. I think that's a Southern thing. The stories thing. Yeah.
I bet. Yeah. So we're originally Atlanta and in North Carolina, but
right.
all of that to say, like, it was so fun. But the discipline that I learned going away from home, being in boarding school, being with these little tiny ballerinas who, I mean, it was like Fame. It was like that creepy movie, Black Swan. It was, I trained at what was called the Juilliard of the South, North Carolina School of the Arts, right? So we were in high school, and then I went to college, got a full BA from UNC, but at the same time, doubled up for that like insane, aggressive, super competitive major in performing arts, so that when I graduated, I could get the role that I got. But all that to say, auditioning 100 times a week gives you a very thick skin.
Right.
Learning 80 pages of lines a day gives you incredible discipline. Being on set from 5 a.m. till like 6, 7 p.m. makes you focus and gives you a sense of work ethic that like you don't expect. You know, as an early founder, I had no expectations that I would have a life. That didn't occur to me. Right. And I think that, you know, for me, in so many ways, it set me up really well. Plus, like the ability to perhaps, you know, speak in front of folks. And I had 5, 6 years of, you know, diction and voice and all that good stuff. It doesn't hurt you as the, you know, the sole communicator of a business. Right. So.
Wow. Okay. So you invested basically the latter part of your childhood and early adult life into pursuing performance art.
Yeah.
And somewhere in there, something changed, right? I mean, something had to have changed.
Yeah.
Now, was it just, it wasn't what you thought it would be? Like what, like, I mean, I know what kind of pushed me into a space where I had to make some real big changes in my life, but like what was it? Was it just a general dissatisfaction with the way things were going? Was it just this nice shiny opportunity showed up? Like what makes you pivot off something that you were so heavily invested in?
I mean, part of it, to be totally honest, is been there, done that. I ticked the box. I was on Broadway. It's on my grandma's favorite show. I was on, you know, TV sitcoms, did a bunch of movies, did some movies for Paramount and stuff. And I was like, this is so fun. And I really felt like I had done it. Of course, I could have pushed it farther, you know, and maybe some people would say I should have. But for me, it was more like, oh, at a certain point, I started noticing things because I got older and smarter. And I was like at 20, you know, at 18, I had a very different perception of the industry than at like 22 and then 25. I was like, wow, this is interesting because I'm looking around and realizing, you know, this business does not add up for the entertainers, for the actual artists. It doesn't back out. You have no upside. You have no equity. You are basically just a paid cog in the wheel. And especially for women, and this pissed me off, when women got to be up around 30, you know,
Right.
when you're at the height of your career or even not, that was
Right.
shelf life. That was your shelf
Right.
life. And at
Right.
that point, like you started to lose value and you had maintained no ownership. And my
Right.
dad's an entrepreneur, and my grandma, we could talk about this later, but she was one of the first female coders in the world. She was
Really?
part of the Signal Intelligence Corps, yeah, for the Army, for the war force, for the war efforts during World War II. So she helped crack the code. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so for the German U-boat specifically.
Right. Right.
But because of her, and then my grandfather, who was one of the first big executives at like Life of Georgia, but the point being, he actually created a whole programming team there in
Mhm.
the 50s and 60s when there were no programmers. And he went
Right.
to historically Black colleges and hired folks out of there to be his programmers because he was like, these people are brilliant and they work really hard. And that was so groundbreaking at the time, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
For so many
Absolutely.
reasons, so many reasons. But I was like, because I had my grandma, my grandfather, my dad is an entrepreneur, and then my brother's a coder. So I'm steeped in this idea of building
Of creating.
cool
Yeah. Yeah.
shit. Like
Yeah.
build
Yeah.
stuff that you own,
Yeah.
build stuff that will change the world. And like when you're an actor, Jody, you kind of can because you're like, you're telling the story, but you're just the
Right.
mouthpiece. You're not actually
Right.
building the platform, are you?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You know, what's funny is I prior to joining Lighter,
Mm-hmm.
I consulted for a couple years. One of which was a company that developed a platform for the investment management industry, and
Cool. Yeah.
they asked me to come in and help. And I'd worked for PitchBook for several years
Ah,
prior to
cool. Yeah.
that. So I knew the data analytics space and kind of selling into kind of more sophisticated environments, investment banks.
Right. Exactly.
Um, but this time I was very, very close to the guys that were building. Like it was just
Cool.
me and
Yeah.
basically the coders, and they were, I was just trying to
Mm-hmm.
help them figure out what to do with this thing, right? And that was the first time I really made the correlation between what they do and art. Like they're literally they're
Yeah.
literally creating something out of nothing, and I
Oh,
well beyond me, and not anything I could do myself, but I did start to gain a healthy appreciation for kind of this whole notion that was like, we're going to come up with this concept and then we're just going to build it
mhm.
from scratch. And I was kind of
Yeah.
intrigued by that. Not so much that I wanted to do it, but enough to gain a really healthy appreciation
Yes.
for what
Yes.
they, and
Exactly.
it changed the way I interfaced with people on that side of the fence. It really did. Cause
Mm-hmm.
I had such a deep understanding. You mentioned
Yeah.
something that's kind of totally different topic though. I'm curious about
Mm-hmm.
this. So you grew up in this family in the South. There, you had a father who was an advocate for people that for non-white men, I guess is the best way to put it,
Yep.
right?
Which is non-traditional at the time, right?
Right. At the time, you have this, a mother that's in education, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Correct. Yep.
that's she's,
Professor at
and
Duke.
then yeah, and then you have this grandmother that's kind of groundbreaking in her own way. So all these examples of people that were kind of either enabling people to blow through barriers or blowing through
Mm.
barriers themselves. All
Huh.
this is happening, and this is what's interesting to me, like all this is happening in the South, which has its own social dynamic, right? So were
Totally.
you
Yeah.
aware of those things growing up? Like, were they on your radar, or was it just kind of like, no, that's
Normal.
whatever? Yeah.
It was normal. Yeah. Everyone, I was not aware that my family had that we were all different, right? I
Right. Right.
actually, I went to kind of also a very, very specific type of school. Like if you're familiar with Montessori, it's kind of similar to that. So I actually went to a
Hmm.
Waldorf school, which
Okay.
is a European form of schooling where
Right.
you're not doing tests, you're not doing multiple choice, you're like delving in, you are learning how to build an engine. You are
It's like,
building an
yeah,
internal
it's more
combustion engine.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
are, you are taking care of a horse. You are actually gardening to understand
It's the
biology.
practical application
Yeah.
of skills. It's not like
Yes.
the
I feel like
theoretical
Elon would have
understanding.
liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elon Musk
Yeah.
would like this kind of schooling. But in any case, so that was a little bit unusual. And then because I was just brought up with, my parents, my grandparents, everybody had been thinking outside the mold. I just absorbed it. It's nothing innate to me. It's totally stuff I've just
Did
absorbed
you
and inherited.
did you realize it when you lifted out of that environment and plunked down in this liberal state city that is LA? That's, I mean, you know, I love LA, but it's crazy down there.
It's
Like,
crazy.
when did you, was there a point where you like realized how different your experience
Yeah.
growing up in the South was versus
I
others? Like,
think so. Yeah,
yeah,
and that's the thing when you talk about the South, it was a very different Southern experience for me than I think a lot of
right,
people would stereotypically think. Like I grew up in the
right,
bastion of progressive, very, very, very blue counties in the midst of North
right,
Carolina between Duke, UNC, this little
right,
pocket.
right, right,
And so when I went to LA, nothing socially was strange at all. I had the same set of, I think roughly the same set of like progressive beliefs,
right.
inclusive beliefs.
Hmm.
The difference was I had always been taught to execute. Don't just talk about things, like actually build,
Right,
actually do, one foot in front of the other,
right,
and be incredibly disciplined. And that came to me through my parents, but also through my schooling and through,
right,
years and years in this college experience where like I had no weekends ever, Jody. Like I would get up, my classes started at 8, I finished classes at 2 p.m. and then my extracurricular, performing arts world started, and that went till
right.
midnight every day, including weekends. I had zero extra time and I was like a little machine. So when I got to LA, what I was super weirded out about is like how no one worked and no one did anything. And I was like, what are
Right,
y'all,
right, 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 right,
what are you doing?
right,
It was
right.
so bizarre.
That was when I first started working LA, well, Southern California, LA in
Yeah.
particular. I very quickly picked up on that, like there's a lot of people that will waste your time if you let them. And it only took me about 2 trips down before I really started to like hone in on like,
Lots of
okay,
talk.
yeah, yeah, and just structuring my schedule, and I was down there to make sure that it was, I was engaging
Mm-hmm.
in things that had legitimate traction, and it wasn't
Yep.
just,
Yeah.
glitz, because it's real easy to like be on LA.
Yeah.
It's like, so, it's really easy to be down there and then get sucked up into something, and next thing you know,
Yeah.
you're out on somebody's boat, and the whole thing's vapor.
I was
It's
gonna
like
say,
it's
and it's really fun for the weekend you're there, and then you never hear from these people again. You're like, I wonder
right,
whatever happened to that
right,
project.
right, 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 and
Yeah.
you're like, wait, I thought, okay, and then it just, I was like, okay, I get it, and so
Mm-hmm.
I had to be
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn to be very targeted, because it's like I'm going to be down there for like 4 days. I got to get 15, 20
Yeah.
meetings in. I don't have time to waste, right? And
Yep.
that's kind of how that became. But yeah, I picked up on that. I think I think yours was a little more deliberate. I picked up on some discipline. I call them success habits, like, those little disciplines,
Mm-hmm.
in the context of being an athlete, and just,
Mm,
kind of having to show up every day. But it was
yeah.
more just because that was just always the carrot for me. And then like
Yeah.
the byproduct was like, oh, like, and then I was like, well, you show up and you work every day. Like that's like, you don't
Not
get
normal.
better if you don't, like,
Yes.
that's how you get
Yeah.
better, right?
Yeah.
Surprising how few people embrace that.
So funny. I have had like engineers that I've been recruiting here and there. I mean, but it's funny. Only in LA this has ever happened. But they'll be like, yeah, typically what I'm looking for in a company is like, I really want to establish like a really healthy work-life balance. And I'm like, yeah, I'm all a
Yeah.
proponent of that. And
Mhm.
but I really have discovered that for me, I just really need to come in, after I'll surf around 10, I'll come in around 1, but I really need to wrap up at 5. I'm like, huh. So to me, it sounds like you don't actually want a job. So like, that's fine, but go
Right.
freelance somewhere and just make bank. Don't come work full time as an FTE for
Right.
me.
Right.
So
Right.
funny.
But that's the expectation that's been set
Yeah.
to some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
it's hard for me
Damn
to get
Google
my
and their flexibility. We
I
can't do
know.
that. I can't
I
compete with
know.
that. I'm sorry.
Oh, they're high paying, flexible jobs. Damn it.
Yeah,
You know what?
exactly.
I don't know
So
though.
funny.
I mean, I've met a lot of people that, I live in the backyard of Microsoft and
Right.
Amazon and
Yes.
Starbucks and Costco and all these, like,
Yeah.
brands that you don't always necessarily immediately associate with Seattle. I mean, I think
Mhm.
Microsoft, yeah, but
I
some of
do,
the
but
others,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's just interesting. Like, you don't see, um, they're really well taken care of. And I think to some degree, it almost depresses the startup ecosystem here a little bit, because it's kind of hard to get somebody to take a flyer on, leave their 200K plus cushy job to take a flyer when there's not a lot of examples around them of people that have done that have like seen their way through. Right. And I think it makes it really challenging to recruit talent here if you're kind of a fledgling startup. It really does. And on top of it just being absurdly expensive, which is basically the West Coast as a whole. So we won't even get into that. So, okay. So I know this is jumping all over the place.
Makes it fun.
It is, but that's what this is all about. So, okay. So you endeavor to be an actress, you achieve relative success, you know, certainly enough to check the boxes to be like, yeah, I can do this. Yeah. And I'm kind of gangster at it. Right. So, okay. So you got that personal validation. Was it a specific thing that just kind of pushed you to just be like, I'm done? Or was it, and you don't have to get into it. Like
it was a combo of things. Yeah. Yeah. It was a combo. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't one specific, like horrendous.
And that was like kind of mid-20s type time frame?
On the earlier side of mid-20s. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, a couple things. One, I was like looking around at the industry being like, wow, this is kind of really weird behind the scenes. It's not nearly as glamorous as people think, though it is really fun. I'm not gonna
right. Of course.
Really fun. But then so it's that second thing, one, not super glamorous. Two, you start looking at, wow, what is my actual ownership in these things? I starred in a movie which ended up being moderately successful, and I actually had a couple points on the back end, and I was like, oh man, I don't have this on any of my other things because I'm not Angelina going to Paltrow, whoever.
Right.
And I was like, wow. So as I invest in this industry, which by the way is super sexist and misogynistic, and tells me that I'm gonna fade away pretty quick, right? Yet I have no investment. I have no back end on this, right? So I am depreciating. The value of me as a business is depreciating.
Yeah, your primary asset yourself.
And I'm not diversified at all, right? No diversification. So it's like, man, so that sucks. And then this was the kicker. So I had always been really into like building stuff and tech with especially my brother. We were like building websites at 12 on like shitty dial-up, being like, FTP servers, uploading the files, uploading the pages.
Right.
And I loved that stuff. And it was really fun. And so I started doing hackathons on the weekends. So I was on Young and the Restless, consistently. That was my job. And I started sneaking away to hackathons on the weekends. And it was so freaking fun. And I was like, oh, I could build stuff. I can actually have ownership of the whole thing. Like I'm actually creating whole companies, whole businesses, right? And inevitably I started winning a lot of the hackathons. So that was interesting. And then I watched like Hulu pop up because one of my really good friends was one of the first employees there. So I would go and visit and I saw them just like about to eat the lunch of all the studios that I had been working for. And the studios were freaking out. And then you see Netflix coming up and they're poo-pooing it till they're not. And then you see the look of terror in the faces of the studio execs being like, oh my God, again, eating our lunch. So I was like, maybe this space, which I am seeing, just proliferate, is actually where I want to be. So
that reminds me of an Oppenheimer quote. And I think it was an Oppenheimer quote. I could be mistaken, but it was around the truth. And he was like, first it'll be, ridiculed and then something, and then violently opposed, opposed. And then, but it's usually, it's like they poo-poo it until they realize, oh shit, this is happening. And then there's violent opposition, which all you had to do is just accept that it was happening like 2 stages ago, right?
Yes, exactly.
So what you described, kind of from an industry perspective makes me think, forgive me if it wasn't Oppenheimer, but it reminds me of that quote.
Yeah.
And honestly, it kind of applies to what we're seeing happen on a broader scale too. I'm like, not to get into that too deep because that's a sensitive topic for roughly 74 million people. I'm gonna leave that
Mhm.
alone. But
Mhm.
but it's a thing, you know, I mean,
Or even
it's a
Bitcoin.
real,
Bitcoin, to
yeah,
use a really
yeah,
upbeat
yeah,
example, like
yeah, yeah.
people poo-pooed the heck out of Bitcoin, right? And then,
Hmm.
recently it's been like, blah, blah, blah. Fidelity released 2 white papers, and then even Chase had
Hmm.
an internal memo that was released that was like, oh, it's actually good. And then
Right.
MicroStrategies, of course, has always been ballsy. And now, of course, Elon Musk says, oh, we're investing 1.5 billion. And then suddenly every single corporate company is going to try to get Bitcoin on their balance sheet. It's hilarious to me.
Right. Yeah. So okay.
Yes.
So you start your first company
Yeah.
that goes for a little
Well, I
bit.
sold it. Yeah. 13
Yeah.
months later, I was like, boom, okay, great. That was fun. I was
Yeah.
young. I didn't know what to expect. So I was like, oh my God, this is a massive offer. Of course it wasn't. But,
Right.
so I exited that. Then my second business, I was really excited about, kind of still am, but we had to pause it, put it on ice, whatever you want to say, because I actually got funding for Klickly.
Right.
So when that happened, I was just like, I have to. I am not one of those crazy, like hyphenate multi-entrepreneurial people where you run like two,
Yeah.
three businesses at once. I have
That's
such
tough.
skepticism. I'm like, Jack, how are you doing this? Elon, how are you doing this? Obviously, I
Right.
can't call either of them to question, but it is so puzzling to me. All these other founder friends that I know who are like trying to do 2 and 3 things. I can't. I do one, especially once I take people's money. That's insane to me. I'm like, I am doing
OPM
this,
is,
right?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This is my thing. If I take money, if I take on capital, if I raise money, your money from Lighter or anyone else's, I better freaking be full time, heads down, focused on the biz for me. So I
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, based on what you accomplished over the last couple of years, it appears to be the right decision, Coop. I got to be honest with you.
Context switching is context switching is not your friend, and you
Right?
cannot boil the ocean. And the more focused you could be on like one thing as an entrepreneur, I think
Isn't
the
it funny?
better.
Like all those little sayings, like those are all the things that stick with me. And those are
Yeah.
like literally the things I govern my life by. I can hear
Yeah.
my dad saying, "All money ain't good money, boy." Like I remember him saying that to me,
Mm,
or my grandma, stitching
mm,
time says 9. I know,
yeah.
grandma. Damn.
What a
I didn't
good
say I
saying.
didn't
I
say
love
damn to
that.
my grandma. I got to be
No, she
honest,
would have
but
switched to your wash your
she
mouth
would.
thing.
Yeah, she would have made me go outside and pick a switch. That was
Yep.
some cold-blooded stuff when you had to go outside
Pick
and
your
pick
own switch
pick
to
the
distance.
tool by which you were going to get beat.
Did you get a peach branch? And did you get the skinny ones or the thick ones?
I went for the dry brittle
Yes.
branches because it didn't
Totally.
happen very often. It only happened like once or twice because I
The
don't make the
thread is
same mistake.
scary. And the thread is scary enough, right?
Well, it's the mental warfare. Like you gonna send a little kid outside to go pick their basically their electric chair?
Exactly. Exactly.
That
Oh,
is,
that's funny.
but it left an impression.
Literally.
But no, it's all those little sayings, and I find myself
Mhm.
saying them to my daughters too, like because they're
That's
the
cool.
things that I ultimately that govern my decision making, really, to some degree.
Yeah.
So okay, so you exited real quick, kind of
Mhm.
whirlwind. You're like,
Yeah.
that was easy. Huh, I
Yes.
don't know why everybody said it was so hard, right?
Yeah. Right. 13 months later. Right.
Right. Start another one, and then the
Hmm.
Klickly thing pops up. So
Hmm.
why Mart? I'm curious why Martech? I mean, because you wasn't
I'm
like you came from
yeah.
marketing. What
No,
like what?
no, but I mean, look, I probably did legitimately like over 50 commercials that I was in. So
Mhm.
so I was in a lot, and I definitely saw a lot of brands trying to position themselves in X, Y, or Z way. I was the face of Dish Network for a little while, but all that to say, my first company was also a digital content studio. So we basically created, or agency or whatever. So
Right,
we
right,
created kind of millennial facing content that was statistically more likely to be engaged with. It was super fun. It was short form. It had all those little things. Again, it's like what, 7, 8 years ago. So, but while I was acting, but it worked. And also, here's the thing: as an actor, the one thing you do have to be good at
right. Hmm.
is empathizing with people, psychology.
Hmm.
You have to understand where people are coming from. You have to understand emotions and how they work because you work with them, you manipulate them for yourself all the
Right.
time.
Right.
And so with that background, and then having my first kind of little advertising studio, content studio under my belt, then coming to Klickly, I had a very interesting perspective on the human psyche, how to use user experience in human psychology to
Yeah.
get engagement. And so, but here's what really did it. I was on my phone, I was like scrolling through HuffPost, reading some article, and then in the midst of it, this little ad popped up. And it was an ad for like the freaking cutest pair of shoes I'd ever seen. And I was like, dang, all right, fine. Like, you got me. All right, I'll buy these. And I was sold, by the way. So I was like, I'm definitely buying these. So I get on there and I'm clicking around and I click to the site and it takes forever to upload or to spin up. And I'm just waiting on it. It's annoying me. And then I finally get there and then I got to go put it in my cart and pick all out, the size, the color, get it in there, email address, shipping address, billing address. It pissed me off. I was like,
It was onerous, right?
And it was on my phone. And again, this was like a couple of years ago, but still, right? This even today, like, this
It was
isn't
not a great
totally
user. It
fixed.
wasn't a great user experience.
I was like, wouldn't it be cool if I just had this like little impulse buy button where not only do I have intelligence and algorithms that will show the right person, the right thing at the right time, which by the way, they got lucky and did, but what if I could buy directly in the ad or the email or the social post or whatever? So we created that tech first, both, the ability to target you with things you actually want statistically. And we're very good at it.
Is that based on, well, you don't have to share your secret sauce, based on some sort of data.
Purchase history, what you interact with, a bunch of stuff, billions of data points, and then an aggregate. And there's also a really interesting conversation separately about privacy and user data. And what we're doing is, if you're going to see ads, which everybody's like, oh, I hate ads, I don't want to see anymore. Totally fine, but then you got to freaking pay for every piece of content online because nothing's free, my friend. So if you aren't seeing ads anymore, everything you read and view online will be paid. Everything. Everything, or it will not exist. So that's something that consumers don't understand. Fine, but let's assume we are all going to see ads for the near future of 5 years. Would you rather see things that like you actually want to purchase, or would you rather see weird things about STDs or diapers or who knows what? I love, as a millennial female, I love product discovery. I love discovering like really sweet up and coming brands, especially if they're like founded by like people of color or women or whatever, and they serve my needs and they're brilliant and like ethically sourced. Like, I get super excited about that. And as you can see from the billions of dollars spent on Instagram, a huge portion of people feel the same. So our whole philosophy is, I show you things you actually want versus things you don't, and then you can buy them in the ad. So we patented that technology, put it into a big old dashboard for our brands, and that's what we use as our customer acquisition engine to then go out and use all of our data to actually drive people to find and discover products they actually want. And it's a little bit of it's not against Amazon, but it's like, we're bubbling up the good content.
Yeah. And it, in the sense that, well, if they're not buying it from Amazon, then you are working against Amazon. Like, that is really what it.
Except for that, a lot of the brands that we work with have a very limited, or want to have a very limited experience on Amazon anyway. They don't really want to be there, and some of them are not. So we help grow their profile elsewhere.
Interesting. Once again, I live in their backyard, and it's funny. Like, I actually interviewed at Amazon once. Post pitch book. Yeah. Not a fun experience. It was like,
were they like, and by the way, we cut the bottom 10% performing people every year. Did they tell you that?
Right. That's how you're solving your culture problems. Okay. But no, it was, that's one way to go about it. No, I think for me, one, and I think I knew this before the fact, but I think to some degree I was kind of checking boxes, if I'm being completely honest. But I was obviously looking for work, or figuring out what I was going to focus on next, I guess is a better way to put it. And something popped up. I will say this: 10 rounds. The job changed 3 times.
What? Wow.
And I didn't get any like comp information or anything until like the round, like eighth or ninth round. I mean, this is like a combination of phone and
Right.
in
Understood. That's
person.
intense.
Yeah, but like honestly, like and funny enough, well, it wasn't funny at the time. The week prior to my kind of final round of interviews, where they really put you through the ringer, right? And I ruptured my Achilles, my second Achilles, my right one. I did my left one like 10 years prior. I had not had it repaired yet. So I actually went in on crutches with my foot.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
And dangling. I was on painkillers for obvious reasons. So I'm like, hobbling, and I think it went okay. I could, but I think by the time I like went, I remember like sitting in the room waiting for somebody to come in, like another one. Must have been like the fifth interview that day or something. And I remember going, "Oh my God, I don't want this job. Like, oh my God, I hope you don't offer me this. I can't." I was like, I can't go back and tell my wife at the time that I turned down a job from Amazon. Like, I got up when they don't offer me a job. And they ultimately wound. I was like one of the final two candidates, and they didn't do it. And it was a godsend. I met Leiter, and I'm super happy, and it all worked out. Things work out for the reason they did.
They do, don't they?
But like, even before that, but that was like confirmation of how I will never go work for the Death Star. Never say never, but I won't go do it. Like, so like big, large companies. I'm just, I have to be building something. I have to see how my work is moving the needle. I'm a startup junkie, and now I kind of live in a quasi startup, funding startup. So it's like,
and you work with all the startups, and you don't have to, there's no, bowing to evil Emperor Palpatine anywhere. So, you're good.
No. And there's like not some random person somewhere pulling levers that's flowing through to me that I can't like go have a conversation with them about. It's just, particularly at this stage of my career, it's just not anything that I can even imagine myself doing. I live a pretty cushy existence now. I have a CEO.
And you get to help people.
Right. I get to help people. I get to invest. So cool. I get to I create jobs. Like every time I fund somebody, almost every time it creates opportunity for other people. And awesome. It's like my little mission buried in this for-profit endeavor. Right.
Yeah, and you absolutely can have, as we've seen proven so many times, pro-social for-profit like that. There's nothing that says you can't do both. So that's so cool.
Absolutely. And in our case, we feel debt is a little more unbiased than because we're looking at it quantitatively.
Yeah, exactly.
The background, like all the things that a VC might look at to determine that I feel like I'm overusing homogenous, but it does kind of create this like flow of capital.
Well, when you're pattern matching, Jody, which is what VCs are trained to do, they are trained to pattern match. So you can't pattern match against patterns that haven't existed before. So because you just end up perpetrating more of the same because you're trying to match this pattern of Mark Zuckerberg. And it doesn't include a lot of women, and it doesn't include a lot of people of color, especially people who identify as like African American. Like, good God, the numbers aren't there earlier. So are you gonna, so are you just gonna forever fund, small white dudes who dropped out of college? Like, you could, that's one way, but like
that's a thesis. But you're cutting out such a broad swath. And this isn't, I'm always real careful to say this is not a knock on,
totally not.
like not by any stretch. It's just like there's just so much talent and innovation out there that's buried underneath circumstances that if we can, basically find a way to kind of lift people out of that and elevate them to a place that's visible, then it kind of creates those moments.
New patterns to match.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I love debt in the context that we do it, Leiter's mission. And it, and then I get to spend my days talking to people like yourself, which is always there could be a worse way. There could be a worse way to make a living for sure. So
absolutely.
Well, listen, Coop, I've had you tied up for over an hour now.
I didn't even realize that. I guess
It
you're
went
right.
fast, right?
So
It goes
fast, yeah.
fast. I don't
Like
even know if
when
we
you're
got to
drinking
everything.
kombucha,
When you're drinking
time flies.
kombucha, I don't know. When I'm this is I don't know what. So I'm gonna do
What
some
is
really
it?
old man. I'm gonna do some
Yeah,
really
yeah.
old man stuff right now. You
I'm,
ready? I gotta.
oh, wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's bad. My eyes are shit. Contrano, Cointreau,
Cointreau.
Cointreau.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love that stuff.
I
Tasty.
know. It is. I'm sure I've like ingested like 800 calories of sugar, but that's okay.
You're good. You're good.
I gave up on my figure a long time ago. So
I think
I'm
that
good.
COVID gave up on it for all of us, I think, at this point. Yeah.
I put on a COVID.
Awesome.
I put on a COVID 15 like real quick.
That's better than so you're 4 pounds short of the COVID-19. So hey.
Is that oh, I didn't think about it that way. You're right.
Well done, Jody. Well done.
I appreciate it. I got it on the right trajectory now. I'm actually headed down from I hit a high water mark on my weight, which is never a good thing.
But you're going back in the right direction.
I'm going back in the right direction. Today probably did not help. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Don't
Not
blame me.
blaming.
Don't blame me.
I am blaming you
This was
because
so fun,
I have no interest in self accountability at all. No, I'm blaming it on you. I'm just kidding.
Love it.
Listen, Cooper, I'm so glad we got a chance to connect, and I do look forward to when we can, be bouncing around the Montgomery Summit or recurring revenue conference and bumping into your famous friends and all the things that make me hanging out with Cooper a whirlwind. But thanks for taking some time out of your day.
No, thank you. So much fun. Can't wait to catch up more.
Absolutely.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye.